Day 12, so we're going to be respectful of your time and get on started off here right on time. And then we'll do our best to end early because, well, every time I do this, we run over. So there hasn't been a lot of changes from last month. A lot of the explanations are all the same. So I think we're going to be able to go through this pretty good, and it'll just be a refresher on the same things that we've been talking about as to where we're going. So Mike already has the sheets pulled up that we go through. And these were emailed out to office holders and department heads. If you want to be on this email, just send me an email and we'll add you to that list too. We also put this on the budget website. But looking at our revenues to start off with, our top 5 revenues that are kind of behind pace. Right now, when we look at the top one, it's other revenues under the sheriff's department. And that one's about $292,000 behind pace right now. Last year at this time, it was $1.5 million behind pace. The budget is about $1.5 million lower though than what it was last year. And this is primarily due to federal board. But we've only received 5 out of 6 months worth of federal board into the Eden right now. So we're about a month behind on what's been posted. But about $292,000 behind there. The next one that we have is the recorder's office, and that's about $217,000 behind budget. And as you know, interest rates have really jumped up there. So refinances aren't advantageous to happen anymore. So you really only have new home purchases that are happening, and there's not a lot of houses on the market for sale. So we would expect this activity to be lower right now. Maybe we have some things open up and happen later in the year, but that's really it. It's recording fees. That is a lot lower just because activity is lower out in the market. We can't make up that difference any other way. It's just what the market does. Any comments to add on that, Cheryl, or are we pretty close?
We're about 7,000 documents down from where we were last year.
7,000 documents. The next item that we have is the 31st Judicial Court, and that's in our other jurisdictional revenue. And it's the same thing that we've talked about in past months, is that juvenile gets a DJO salary reimbursement from the state, and that runs behind. And so with that one, we're $183,000 behind. It's a little bit more than we were last year at this time, but that DJO salary is about $204,000 that's backed up. So that's more than what that difference is. And that's just a timing thing on reimbursement. The fourth item that we have is commission other revenue. And this really boils down to resource management, building inspection, and building permit fees. And so that's about $137,000 behind pace. And the building permit and inspection fees are about $122,000 of that. We would expect building to pick up about this time. We should be seeing those fees coming in and coming up. But when we look at this for last year, we were about $162,000 behind at this time, and we actually finished under budget. And our budget this year is the same as what it was last year, anticipating that the fees were going to be increased. And we haven't increased those fees yet. So I anticipate this one to be another one that's going to fall short of what budget is, just because the environment is what it is. And then the last one, the fifth one that we have on revenues being behind, is the prosecuting attorney. And he's about $112,000 behind on state reimbursement for Title 4D. But again, that's a reimbursement from the state, and we run about a month behind. And so we don't anticipate any problems with that either. So really, the one that we think that we're going to fall short on, recording fees for deeds of trusts, and then building inspection and building permit fees. So it's all in that building area. That all turn over in real estate. We do have a couple pretty interesting numbers sitting up there that I'd like to bring out some positives for a change instead of just whining about where we're behind. Anybody here from the Public Administrator's Office? Oh, unbelievable. Okay. I don't know the reason behind this, but if you look at Public Administrator, you see it's 92.5% of budget, and we're less than halfway through the year. So they're doing something extraordinary. We don't know what that is, or the timing of what's been that major input, but they've got 300 and, I can't read it that well, 359,000 out of their 400,000 already in. So great job to them, kudos to them. The other one that I'd like to point out is the Treasurer's Office. And Justin did give me some explanation on this, but right now we're at 115% of budget on interest. Obviously, rates are better. Justin has always been extraordinarily good at keeping our money invested. You know, he keeps a very small amount for operations, and he does a magical job of just making that as small as possible and keeping money invested. He did mention to me that some of this is discounts on investments purchased. So right now, with the interest rate environment being what it is, if you go out and you buy a treasury or a T-bill that was an existing one at the time to finish out a period, it has a lower stated interest rate, but you're going to buy it at a market interest rate. And so that ends up meaning whoever sells it to you is going to sell it at a discount. And so Justin, when he's been buying these discounted bonds, he's been going ahead and booking that discount as revenue before we've received the interest. So some of this is future revenue that we're still yet to receive, but it's still revenue we're going to get. But we haven't actually earned it yet, but we will. So that's part of what it is. And then he has been so tight on investing that he's actually been using some of the float on some of the taxes that we pay out to municipalities. There's a timing difference from when we receive it and by the time we figure out how to distribute it and the timing we spend on paying it, that he's actually able to invest some of that float and actually get some interest on the float before we pay out, because we pay out a significant portion of our LEST tax. And so that's some of the things he was going to mention, but of course the yields are better and he's just darn good at what he does. So there's two real positive things. Anybody have anything else that they want to share as a positive story on revenues? Sales tax has been doing very good. It was been doing bangers the last couple years. This year it's better than anticipated. We budgeted just 3% and we're doing double that right now. This last month, the numbers were actually down from what it was last year. We are monitoring that. We don't want to send up any red flags, but next week we'll have July's receipt in and we'll see if that's something that continues or if there's maybe some slower reporting that happened to fix the past period. But that's something we're keeping our eyes on. We did anticipate sales tax slowing down this year to just a 3% growth. But like I said, right now we're still doing better than that, which is helping our numbers. Let's run to the expenses then. Our top 5 expenditures. The first one we have, and these are all stories that we've heard before, so it's just revisit. Road and Bridge, they're about $855,000 ahead of pace on their operations, but that all boils down to statutory paving. And that's the money that they pay out to municipalities for paving. A lot of times that's trade out work that they do, but I think there's been some payments going out this year, and so that's why they're ahead in that area. Crystal, anything to add to that, or? Okay. The second and third areas are sheriff personnel. The first is in GR, which that's about $362,000 ahead of budget right now. And in 206 LEST, it's about $202,000 ahead of budget. We'll actually visit those on this next page, that is Mike's vacancy page that he sends out. So instead of talking about it now, let's just push that one off. The fourth area is commission, other expenses in LEST. And that one is about $137,000 ahead of pace. And what that boils down to is LEST, again, is a fund that we do distributions on. And so if we have higher sales tax, we have higher distributions. So about 125,000 out of that 137,000 is higher distributions. The remainder of that is actually explained in the billing for the trunked radio system. City utilities changed their billing method, and instead of billing all of the Motorola contract in December, they divided it into 4 quarterly installments. So that pushed off payments a little bit, and so that's why we're higher here. So there's actually, even though we're higher than budget, it's good news. Bills got put off, or we have more revenue causing higher expenses. And then the very last item we have then for our top fives is operations for the sheriff's account. And that one is $43,000 ahead of pace. And that really boils down to medical supplies and food in the jail. And of course, the medical supplies are really dictated by the medical needs of the inmates that you have at the time. And the food is what the food is now. The food's a little disturbing for me in that the sheriff's office, the jail has been between 70 and 80% occupied. And we thought that we were really funding for a 100% occupied jail. However, food costs and inflation is going to be the reason for some of that offset. But I don't know if we're budgeting for a 100% occupied jail next year, what that food line is going to be in next year's budget. So that's something that we're going to have to think about when we're doing next year's budget. Those are really the 5 expenditures. Does anybody want to talk about any other expenditures? Any success stories with expenditures or any areas of concern? I know, it's one of those things. So Mikey, if we can go to the next page and look at the vacancy, because we had those 2 categories for the sheriff's office. And again, this is something that Mike puts together a week after payroll, once it posts in Eden, and it's out on the budget website, so you can see every single pay period. The first area that we have that's red, which means you're ahead of pace in spending, is the recorder's office. And actually, there's a couple items that we believe are just going to make up for that difference, and it's just going to work itself off by the end of the year. One, our insurance costs are not going up, and we had budgeted a 6% increase at mid-year. So that's going to help work that total off. And then there's also been a change in the makeup of the office to where there's a position that's a grade lower now than what was in the budget. And so that $3,195 is easily going to be made up by the end of the year. Mike, if you want to go down to the commission departments real quick. We have general services, just $195 over. That's going to be made up for by the insurance adjustments mid-year. And then the county administrator's office, they had brought an employee onto the roles in that office that was not in the budget. We have a budget adjustment that has been approved by commission and was posted with this next payroll. So that $12,620 went away. And so that takes us to the sheriff's office. And when you look overall, the sheriff's office is $624,000 over budget through 12 pay periods. And that's mainly the payment of overtime because of making up for the vacancies that they have right now. When you look at GR, just a few numbers. When we look at vacancy that we build into the budget, we build $2.5 million of vacancy into the budget for the sheriff's office and jail in GR alone. This 434,000 at the pace that they're going right now, they would be about $942,000 over budget. Now, I know when we first started monitoring this, they've made some changes and they've really improved the spending in this area. However, the spending is still growing, just at a much slower pace. So we do anticipate this being still being over budget because of the payment of overtime. And right now, we have, I think vacancy kind of is the equivalent of about 37 positions. And the sheriff is 45, usually running between 45 and 50 positions with vacancy. And so he's having to pay overtime to fill some of those things, which overtime is always more expensive. But when we look at this, when we do next year's budget, we're going to have to lower the vacancy ratio based on this experience. And of course, vacancy, that $2.5 million that we put in vacancy was based on normal vacancy figures and allows us to spend $2.5 million somewhere else. So when we lower vacancy by at least $1 million, that's $1 million we can't spend somewhere else. So that's another concern that we have. However, when you look at this situation, this is the first full year of operations for the jail. And we just didn't know what we're getting into. And when we look at this and we look at possibly lowering vacancy by $1 million, we might have to lower it by more, because right now, as I said before, the jail's been running between 70 and 80% occupied. We don't know what the personnel costs would be with a 100% occupied jail. So when we look at this situation, it's better than it could be. But it's still just, this is that first year of operations, and we've got to know where we're going to end up. And so next year's budget will probably end up having to, take a hit on spendable cash elsewhere to make sure that we have this covered. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Mike, if we can go to the next page, this is kind of our summary page. And we added our projection column so that it's a little bit easier to understand and see. So right now, we're 47% through the year as of 6/20. So that for that 47% in GR, we're at 54% of revenues. And we've talked about some of those reasons why. The collector has 100% of their revenues in. And so that's a little bit with property tax coming in general revenue, but then also the collector's fees off of that has put them at 100%. And so that some of that 54% is money that's not going to continue on pace. So we'll see that drop down, but we're at 54% compared to 47% on revenues. Expenses are 44% compared to that 47%. So we're doing better on revenues. We're doing better on expenses. With our budget, we thought that we would have a cash spend down of about $12,709,000. See that change in cash at the bottom of general revenue? Right now, our activity through 6/20 doing a full transfer has us only spending down cash $7,028,000. When we project forward where we think we're going to be at the end of the year, we think we're going to be at about $8,468,000 cash spend down. So that's, $4.3 million better in cash position than what we thought we were going to be at. So that's a very good sign for us. When we look at Road and Bridge has changed in cash. We thought they were going to have an increase of about $3.5 million. Right now, with their activity through 6/20, they're at 5.5. And with the projections throughout the year end, we think they're going to be about 5.3. So they're doing much better than budget. The assessor's office, we thought we were going to, with special projects and stuff, we thought we'd have a spend down of about $1,025,000. Right now, their activity is a cash increase of $1,217,000. They get their revenues very early also. But with the projections, we think that their spend down is only going to be about $916,000. So better than budget. So that's another good sign. These are our major funds. And then that takes us to the law enforcement sales tax fund. And we thought, well, is it 47%? 46, 47% through the year. They're at 49% on revenues and 49% on expenses. So a little bit of overage on expenses. That's the only fund where we're really over on expenditures, but revenues are taking care of that. So if you look revenues minus expenses on the budget, we were going to be spending down about $1,330,000 within a transfer coming from GR to take us down to a use in cash of about $948,000. Well, with our activity right now, we're only a spend down of $568,000. And we actually think with the heavy spending, that's going to be lighter throughout the rest of the year. We're only going to have a spend down of about $8,000, and that's without any transfer at all. in LEST. So pretty close to balanced fund, which is pretty extraordinary considering that also includes the unexpected overtime that we're seeing in the sheriff's office. So mainly that's being offset by Dan's additional vacancy at the prosecuting attorney's office, which doesn't help our workload at all, but it does help our fund balance. And so all four of our major funds, four really good positions as we look at ourselves going forward. Really next year, so we have our concerns, food, what's going to happen to vacancy. We have an election, presidential election next year, and what's going to happen to sales tax. So those are really the four things that we're watching right now when it comes to looking forward to next year's budget. Next month, we'll be in the middle of the beginnings of budget, and we'll have personnel plans distributed to office holders and department heads. And we'll be able to talk a little bit more about our numbers this year and how they impact next year's budget. And Commission will probably be giving us a little bit of guidance on a proposed COLA to build into our numbers. It won't be a guaranteed COLA, but by putting employees first, we'll be putting that number out there earlier and trying to balance everything to where we can achieve that number. But it's not a commitment by any means. It's a goal number that we're trying to reach. Anybody have any questions or comments about what we've talked about today in next year's budget or anything like that? We're here to help explain or give explanations or say, I don't know, let me find out for you. All right, everybody.